In cognitive warfare, the mind is the battlefield, and this is a crucial component of China's strategy for Taiwan. China is deploying AI algorithms to reshape Taiwan's perceptions of national identity. I'm Divya Gopalan, and on Connected on TaiwanPlus, we'll be looking at how China is weaponizing the social media we use every day and how Taiwan is fighting back. To understand how this quiet war is being fought and why it matters for democracies beyond Taiwan, we're joined by Samuel Straw, Head of Research at the Taiwan Digital Diplomacy Association, and Mariah Thornton, a teaching fellow at the London School of Economics, whose research focuses on Taiwan's socio-technical resistance to disinformation. She was also the Press and Communications Officer at the Taipei Representative Office in London from 2018 to 2020. Thank you both so much for being in the program. Sam, I'm going to start with you. Can I get your take on how you define cognitive warfare, and secondly, why it is so significant for China's military?
Hi, Divya. Thank you so much for having me. So cognitive warfare, I think, simply just boils down to how our perception of things shapes the reality. What we believe will shape what we think and do with our actions. So cognitive warfare is this shaping, the mental shaping of your mind. And so this is just practically, it's how if you see an ad in the store that says maybe something looks interesting, maybe you'll go out and buy it. So the same thing here, cognitive warfare in Taiwan. This is just China doing its best to weaken the will of the Taiwanese people to fight. So this isn't just spreading false information, but also trying to degrade trust in institutions here in Taiwan. Just sow fear, confusion, because democracy works when everyone's believing in the institutions. So if the belief in these institutions starts to degrade and erode, then Taiwan will become a much easier target for China. So due to this, the PLA, of course, is quite interested in eroding public trust in institutions and just having people have less trust in Taiwan.
So, Mariah, can I get your take on this and your point of view of why this is something that the Chinese military is definitely holding on or grabbing onto?
Absolutely. So I completely echo what Sam was saying about cognitive warfare being about perception shaping. To give some broader context, cognitive warfare fits in with a broader PLA strategy of the three warfares, or Sanjan, which is public opinion warfare, 舆论战, psychological warfare, 心理战, and legal warfare, 法律战. And so within these three warfares, cognitive warfare is a subset of psychological warfare, according to PLA military theorists. But there's also how this links to a broader strategy of united front work. And so united front work is a Leninist ideology, which has two dimensions to it. One is alliance building that's in service of Chinese Communist Party strategic goals. And the other dimension of it is exploiting cracks or divisions within a civil society in order to advance CCP strategic goals.
Let's take a look at how Taiwan views the credibility of China and the U.S., a key battleground of cognitive warfare. Now, since the American Portrait Survey began in 2021, the U.S. credibility has dropped nearly 12 percentage points, with just over a third of the respondents agreeing. Meanwhile, respondents agreeing with China's credibility are at their highest since the survey began. However, in the 2026 survey, nearly 59% of respondents agreed that they would resist at any cost if China attacks, even without American military intervention. Around 36% reported that they would not resist under the same conditions, while just over 5% declined to answer. Okay, so I just want to get your reaction to these numbers and the changes that we saw there, just very, very broadly speaking. Sam, what does this say to you about Taiwan's mindset?
I think this is a trend worldwide where everything is getting quite more extreme politically. There's a lot less willingness to see across party lines. And so as the world, as Mark Carney put it at Davos, as the world is changing, so too do public opinions shift regarding China and Taiwan and the US here. So quoting the same American Portrait survey, there is also still a willingness to defend Taiwan. This has been true since many studies have been conducted since 1998.
Mariah, who would you say is most susceptible to cognitive warfare in Taiwan, and why are they being targeted?
So there are some specific groups within Taiwanese civil society that I would say are more targeted by China's cognitive warfare and United Front work than others. So one of the sectors would be people that are deeply religious and attend temples, because it's well known that temples are like a battleground for China's United Front work, and temples are also where a lot of the local election campaigning happens on the ground. So people, highly religious people, and apart from that, it's also, I would say, increasingly young people that are relying on TikTok as one of their main information sources. So we've seen like an influx of a lot of anti-American and DPP skeptic kind of videos that are flooding the information space. And we saw especially a lot of that in the run-up to the January 2024 elections in Taiwan. I would also say ex-Taiwanese military service people, so Taiwanese veterans, are also a common target of United Front work and cognitive warfare. So I'd say, these kind of groups tend to be the target of these interference operations from China.
So I'd imagine that these groups, Mariah, were always the more vulnerable, or more basically the more influenceable groups to a certain extent. But I'd like to understand, what would you say is the difference between the old style of propaganda we used to see and the type of cognitive warfare now that China is deploying?
So I think there's been a very big shift in tone. So previous propaganda from China towards Taiwan really emphasized this shared history and cultural aspects and language. So, the common phrases is like, one family across both sides of the strait. And that was very much, something that was emblematic of the type of propaganda China used to target Taiwan and encourage Taiwanese people to lean into any kind of Chinese identity. However, with the propaganda and cognitive warfare that we're seeing more recently, it really emphasizing that almost like the inevitability of Chinese invasion of Taiwan. So, for example, there was an essay from an ex-PLA director called Chen Xianyi, he wrote an essay called "Urging Tsai Ing-wen and her military and political leaders to surrender," and then in this essay, it emphasized the deafening sounds of artillery fire surrounds you on all sides. The PLA modern fighter jets have surrounded all of Taiwan like an iron barrel. So this is quite extreme tone and extreme language now. And this essay was turned into several video clips which flooded the, Taiwanese information ecosystem. You could say it achieved a level of virality.
So Sam, how would you say AI is sharpening China's strategies then, given the type of messaging they have now?
Yes. So I think given AI in every industry is just scaling everything, right? So we see with AI specifically, one person can now maybe do the work of 10 or maybe 100 now with OpenClaw. So AI just has really supercharged this machine and just has really pushed things to scales that it's very hard to deal with. Disinformation, traditional propaganda is very easy to disperse. There's a spokesperson, there's a state, there's someone behind it, but with AI, misinformation videos, especially AI-generated content that you might see on Reels, TikTok, or otherwise, it's very hard to figure out where these are coming from, the sources, and just the sheer amount of them is just very hard to deal with. So Taiwan last year during the recall election, there was a flood of misinformation of these short-form AI-generated content videos, which plagued during the recall, and then also during the KMT chair race, there was a lot of these AI-generated videos which were coming up. And as Mariah mentioned, there's many vulnerable populations in Taiwan, and notably those with lower media literacy will usually fall victim to these AI-generated fakes, which day by day are becoming more and more realistic. All it takes is maybe a few swipes on your phone to come across some. And for some, it may be quite obvious that this politician or public figurehead might not have said this. For those more vulnerable populations which need more media literacy training, they may take it as face value, and those populations will bring that mindset and those thoughts into the voting booth with them.
All right, so we know what China's doing, but let's take a look at Taiwan's response. Mariah, you've been looking at Taiwan's whole of society response. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. So whole of society resistance, generally speaking, is civil society actors collaborating with the state in order to counter interference. And so it's a way of countering interference that doesn't involve the traditional diplomatic and military channels. So civil society has a really important role to play. Political warfare system in particular, is responsible for something called all-out defense education, which is responsible for teaching Taiwanese military service people as well as civilians about the nature of Chinese interference and United Front work. On the other hand, on the civil society side, there are a lot of important civic defense organizations that have emerged voluntarily, such as Forward Alliance, such as Kuma Academy, those kinds of organizations, Double Think Lab. There's also GovZero is also involved in civil defense projects. And what's really impressive about these civil society organizations is that they run a lot of education initiatives, which bolster, again, civil society awareness of Chinese interference, but also equip them with technological tools to help them identify Chinese disinformation quickly and improve media literacy.
Mm-hmm. And Sam, I believe that you are also in the line of work of equipping people in Taiwan to identify mis and disinformation, in particular with an AI tool to help internet users with this. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, thank you, Divya. Yeah, I would love to. So TDDA, in cooperation with various partners, including Taiwan Fact Check Center and TWNIC, we have launched this tool called Zhenjia Miao, which translates, the cute name is Miao Fact Check, but Zhenjia in Chinese just means true or false. Miao, meow, we have it as the cat way of saying meow, but in Chinese it's similar to the word that means to look at. And so this is another way to say true or false, let's take a look. So this tool uses Taiwan Fact Check Center database, and through using AI-generated power through API tokens and keys such as this, we access this database to create this Google Chrome extension where you can add it into your Chrome browser. And then on any web page you're browsing, whether it's Facebook or any web page, you can just click on this tool in the top right corner of your Google Chrome extension, and it will analyze all the text to see if there's any common narratives or trends which match up with the database of known misinformation or skeptic rhetoric. This goes beyond just if there's misinformation, but this is even just the tool can even identify more mainland Chinese vocabulary structures, or even if there's unnecessarily heightened U.S. skepticism. Because as we know, mistrust in Taiwanese institutions is one thing, but also the U.S. is quite an important ally for Taiwan. So another big important push for the PLA, for Big Brother across the Taiwanese Strait, is to drive Taiwan and the U.S. further apart. Some other quick institutions which viewers may be interested to check out on their own time, which make up Taiwan's robust civil society, I'd like to mention is already Taiwan Fact Check Center, Kofax, MyGoPen, Fake News Cleaner, and FactLink, IORG, and of course, Taiwan Digital Diplomacy Association.
We'll make a note of all of that on our website and our YouTube channels for our audience to go to. By far, China's primary vehicle for cognitive warfare is social media. And no surprise, it's TikTok, a platform originating in China itself. That has rewritten the rules of global social media. 73% of 16 to 25-year-olds in Taiwan report using the platform in 2025. And a study by the Taiwan-based think tank Doublethink Lab found that those in Taiwan who use TikTok for more than an hour a week were softer on China and more skeptical of the administration in Taiwan. What this study called active users, those on the app for more than an hour a week, were more likely than those clocking less time to think that the current government in Taiwan is their primary producer of disinformation. Active users also tended to view the Chinese Communist Party as no different from the current administration in Taiwan and think that Taiwan lacks freedom of speech. They were also more inclined to think that cross-strait unification will not significantly change ordinary people's lives and more likely to blame the United States or political parties in Taiwan for cross-strait tension as opposed to Beijing. All right, Sam, so we saw those stats there and certainly looks like TikTok or active users of TikTok are having some impact on the perceptions of those using it here in Taiwan. Is there causation there? Is TikTok implanting and fostering these narratives in Taiwan, or does it just believe, or do people who just believe in this stuff anyway just amplify their beliefs?
So as is the goal of most every major social media company, is to retain users and keep people on the platform. So this is to appeal to people's emotions, and maybe negative emotions are more interesting to people compared to positive emotions. So as China's prerogative is to sow distrust and fear amongst Taiwanese populations, there is a push to push out more negative or content such as this. And we know TikTok is not just some innocent bystander. As is seen in the US, this harvesting of data amongst all these users is quite valuable. And the US has then pushed TikTok ownership to be pushed onto a US company, Oracle, where they host all the data. So in Taiwan, it's very important that users are aware that this social media platform is maybe not as any other platform they may use. And also beyond TikTok, other Chinese platforms such as Xiaohongshu also push similar content up until Taiwan was able to secure a 1-year block of this application. And Xiaohongshu was only blocked due to a technicality because law enforcement in Taiwan could not obtain necessary data to follow through on some scams that were being done through Xiaohongshu. So I would liken this to how Xiaohongshu got a 1-year ban in Taiwan, similar to how in the US, the gangster Al Capone finally got locked up due to tax fraud. It wasn't the main offense that Al Capone had, and maybe TikTok's main offense wasn't just not relaying important fraud information to local authorities, but Taiwan was still able to get it down. And I'm sure there's a push in some part in the ruling party to try to do the same to TikTok.
Now, Mariah, TikTok has changed the entire media landscape in the way that they're using hyper-targeted content that's proven to be highly addictive. To what extent can we say that this is a win for China, and particularly when it comes to algorithmic or having a tool for algorithmic cognitive warfare?
So I would not describe it as a win for China, simply because I still think that, as the American Portrait Survey results show, that Taiwanese people's morale and willingness to fight if China did invade Taiwan and then try to enforce unification is still high. However, one of the ways that the PRC's cognitive warfare strategies have manifested on TikTok is that it's cultivating internet influencers who are pro-China and disseminating rumors on platforms, not just TikTok, but also YouTube. And when Xiaohongshu wasn't banned, also in Xiaohongshu, which are all kind of designed to point out flaws and issues with Taiwan's democratic institutions. And I think a good kind of case study of this was in the run-up to the Taiwan's January 2024 elections. There was a national egg shortage. We saw a flood of TikTok videos that were spreading disinformation about the DPP engaging in egg hoarding. So this is a very serious issue, and I would say that, that the civil society and the state need to work together in order to innovate the tools of resistance to keep pace with the tools of interference.
Do you think, I mean, given the fact that, that there is, social media is flooded at the moment, and there's so much misinformation, disinformation, and again, a lot of content coming from China that perhaps has permeated through, different parts of Taiwan society, particularly with young people. I just want to get an idea of the sentiment, and this is to both of you, maybe starting with you, Sam. Is China making young people feel like they've already lost Taiwan to China?
Yes. So as I mentioned, the U.S. skepticism narrative, there's also hugely the defeatism narrative. That the war is over before it even begins. The war in the mind is over. It's not worth even resisting at all. So I think much like how Taiwan is adopting this whole of society resilience platform, I think China is using whole of society measures to inflict damage to Taiwan. As Mariah just highlighted, many key opinion leaders, influencers, even major stars of Taiwan, as they grow in popularity, if they want to continue these large revenue streams, they must kind of bend the knee, so as to say, to China, and just say there is one China, and that is China alone. So because of this whole of society kind of attack that China does on Taiwan, it is very difficult, and it is important for these literacy tools, media literacy tools, and all these civil society organizations to work together. And also, it's not just creating tools, but it's also having people adopt and use these tools.
Right. So, Mariah, yeah, please jump in.
I just wanted to also add on to what Sam was saying, that the Taiwanese state has also started to promote these tools and incorporate these tools for identifying disinformation and fake news into their all-out defense education curriculum. So, for example, the all-out defense education curriculum has now started to produce videos which are educating Taiwanese children from a young age that if there is like an environmental disaster and you receive maybe a suspicious piece of news about this environmental disaster, such as an earthquake, here are all these different civil society organizations and tools that you can access in order to verify that information. So I think it's in part all this diversity of different tools from Taiwanese civil society, but it's also the state has taken measures to incorporate people's knowledge and education about how to use these tools during times of political and environmental stress and vulnerability. Yeah.
So, and finally, Mariah, and the question to both of you, is Taiwan doing enough, and what more would you like to see Taiwan do? Mariah first.
I think Taiwan is doing a lot, and has a history of educating its public and its military service people about Chinese interference. So there's a high level of awareness of Chinese interference tactics. I think, of course, a lot of Taiwanese people I've spoken to for my research say that Taiwan could do more. And one of the ways that they say Taiwan could do more is to have greater public-private partnerships and more collaboration between the civil society organizations and, for example, the Ministry of Defense infrastructure that's responsible for counter-interference, because as the American Portrait Survey was kind of showing, their partisan politics and these divisions between DPP and KMT over China is still something that informs these divisions and disagreements within Taiwan over how to deal with the China issue. So anything that promotes kind of consensus around the China threat and consensus around how to deal with the China threat is going to be beneficial and improve the quality of whole of society resistance.
Right, and Sam, yes, definitely, as you pointed out, those divisions or those vacuums created definitely give space for more cognitive warfare, disinformation to creep in. But from your point of view, is Taiwan doing enough? And given the speed that we see AI developing and these algorithms developing, do you feel like Taiwan is moving fast enough to keep up?
So without a doubt, Taiwan is doing plenty. Anyone can see that. But what's more important is consensus. Right now, Taiwanese politics are quite divided, as is the whole world is becoming more divided. So unfortunately, even just between the party lines, there's lots of rivalries, bickering, unfortunately, that we will see frequently on the news. So I think cross-party unity is very important right now. But notably, something I wanted to highlight from the American portrait was that Taiwanese feel that arms sales do not as effectively as other means promote Taiwan's defense from the U.S. Instead, a lot of Taiwanese said that U.S. patrols, whether that's in the air or by sea around Taiwan, high-level visits like Nancy Pelosi and also presidential statements are more effective in Taiwanese feeling that the U.S. is more of a credible ally to Taiwan. So I think also part of the issue beyond consensus is understanding appropriately how to address these issues, and not just the way that maybe you think they need to be addressed, but first listening to see how the people want things addressed and then following through on this. And just in general, less division and more self-reliance, not relying so much on external actors in order to have this inner stability.
Thank you both so much. You know, this is just the beginning of many conversations we should be having. Thank you, Samuel Straw and Mariah Thornton. And for our viewers, it has been good to have your company. If you'd like more tech and business stories from Taiwan, follow us on our socials, where we keep you informed, engaged, and connected.